If you've ever pulled a tarot card, looked at it, and thought, wait, what? This makes no sense. And then you just sit there, staring at it, hoping something clicks, and nothing does. This video is going to change that for you. Because what if I told you, those moments, when the card doesn't make sense, are actually where your intuition starts developing the most, and most people completely miss that. So let's talk about what's really happening in that moment. Because it's not random, it's not a mistake. And it's definitely not a sign that you're bad at tarot. It's something else. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. The first thing you need to understand is this. When a tarot card doesn't make sense, it's usually because you're trying to read it like a definition. And tarot doesn't like being treated like a definition. It's more like a conversation where someone answers you indirectly. And if you expect a straight answer, you'll miss it every time. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Imagine you ask about your career, and you pull the Ten of Wands. Now your brain might go, okay, stress, burden, hard work, but something feels off, so you assume you don't understand the card. But here's the part most people skip, and this is where it gets interesting. Instead of asking, what does this card mean? Ask yourself, what about this image is trying to get my attention? Because your eyes already know where to look. You just don't trust it yet. Maybe you notice how the person is almost at the finish line. Maybe you notice how they can't even see where they're going anymore. And suddenly, the message shifts into something much more personal. I'm pushing through something, but I might be losing perspective. That didn't come from memorizing. That came from noticing. And here's where it gets a bit uncomfortable, but also powerful. Sometimes the card makes perfect sense. You just don't like the answer, so your brain rejects it. And this is where people spiral. Let's say you ask about a relationship, and you pull the Lovers. Your first instinct is, this is about connection, or a choice. But then something in you goes, no, it can't be that simple. So you start digging, overthinking, adding layers that weren't there, until the message disappears completely. But what if the first answer was actually the right one? What if tarot is simple, and we're the ones making it complicated? Now here's something that will completely change how you read tarot. And once you hear this, you'll start noticing it everywhere. A lot of the time, the card doesn't make sense because your question doesn't. And no one really tells you this. If you ask something like, what's going to happen in my life? Tarot has nothing specific to respond to, so the answer feels vague, disconnected, random. But if you shift it slightly and ask, what do I need to focus on right now to move forward? You'll get a completely different experience. Same cards, different clarity. And this is where it gets really interesting, because sometimes, even when your question is clear, the card still feels off, like it's answering something else entirely. And that's not an accident. Let's say you ask about love, and you pull the Four of Swords. You might think, what does rest have to do with love? But what if the message isn't about love at all? What if it's saying you're too exhausted to receive what you're asking for? That hits differently, and suddenly the card makes sense, just not in the way you expected. Now I want you to try something that might feel a bit strange at first, but it works almost every time. Describe the card out loud, not the meaning, not what you think it's supposed to say, just what you see. Say something like, I see someone sitting alone, holding their head. Everything looks heavy. And then pause, because this is the moment where something clicks. Ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Not logically, emotionally. Because tarot speaks in recognition, not explanation. And here's the part most people get wrong right after this. They pull another card, and then another one. And suddenly, they're not confused about one card anymore. They're overwhelmed by 5. So instead of escaping the confusion, stay in it for a moment. Because confusion is not a dead end. It's actually the doorway. It means you're about to understand something. You just haven't let it land yet. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood cards, the Tower. Because this is where people really panic. You ask, should I take this opportunity? And you pull the Tower. Instant reaction. Oh no, that's a disaster, that's a no. But wait, look again. What's actually happening in the card? Something unstable is collapsing. Something that couldn't last is breaking down. So maybe the real message is, this will change everything. Are you ready to rebuild? That's not fear, that's transformation. And suddenly, the card feels completely different. Here's something that might surprise you. Your first reaction to a card is usually the most accurate one. It's quick, it's quiet, and it doesn't try to impress you. But then your mind steps in, and it starts questioning, doubting, trying to make it sound correct. And that's where you lose it. So next time, notice that first thought. Even if it feels random, even if it doesn't sound like something you've read before, that's often the real message. And sometimes, there won't be a clear answer at all. And that's okay, because tarot isn't always trying to give you clarity immediately. Sometimes it's planting something you'll understand later, when you're ready to see it differently. So if you pull a card and it doesn't make sense, instead of forcing it, just say, I don't fully understand this yet, but I will. And leave it there, because more often than not, it clicks later. And when it does, it feels so much more real. And I'll leave you with this, because this is where everything shifts. Tarot is not always answering your question. Sometimes, it's asking you one. So next time a card doesn't make sense, don't ask, what does this mean? Ask, what is this trying to make me realize? And just sit with that for a moment. If you found this helpful, subscribe and join me on this journey. And thank you for being here. Have a magical day.